She taught me to prioritize and put my family first, because that's what she did for us. I also knew early on that I wanted to be a teacher like my mom. I did become a teacher, and I even taught kindergarten in the same school district that she taught in when we lived in Lancaster. In those years of teaching and living in the same town with my mom and dad, well, we had Tyler, Kelsey, and Alyssa, and they were such a part of their young childhood life. Were some of the happiest years of my life. But there are so many ways that I can only strive to be little Nelda. She was an inspiration to me, and I have yet to live up to her in so many aspects. She was a godly wife, and even when it was a hardship on her or us, moving us around 1,000 times, she always had faith. She put her faith in God, and she put her faith in our dad. She sacrificed many things for Dad's ministry, and I will always admire her for her steadfastness in that faith. My mom taught me what it was to be a Christian. She lived out her faith in her day-to-day life. And I remember her doing her daily devotions every morning before we came down for breakfast, if we came down for breakfast. And I remember her reading and studying her Bible and doing her best to live her life according to God's Word. She was never really preachy, but she was also not shy about sharing her faith and teaching me. She taught me when I was a very little girl. I would have nightmares, and I would go to her and she would say, "Tanya, just call on the name of Jesus. Just call on Jesus." I'm still calling on Jesus. She taught me that God loved me and she loved me, even when I screwed up like I did innumerable times. She always accepted all of us for who we were and loved us unconditionally. My mom was a great mom, but she was also a really great grandma. When my kids were little, we lived in Arizona, and she would come out and spend a week with us every few months. My kids loved their visits from their Nana Banana. She would play with them, and she had a way of making everything like a game. She would take them to the park, walk up the road, take them to the park and put them on the swings, and she would swing them, and with every push she would say, "Go to the moon!" And they would swing back and go to the moon. And when they would get tucked in at night, they'd say, "Nana, take us to the moon." Because everything was more fun when Nana was around. And me and my mom were truly friends. As she got older, we loved to go to lunch and go shopping, and sometimes we'd end up buying the same thing. I remember one year we had a family portrait done, and I was horrified because I went to the photographer and my mom and I had the same sweater on. Now, I was just not happy about that at the moment. But now I look at that and I smile and I think, that was just me and my mom. But as she got older and the years went on, we didn't have shopping and fun lunches. It became taking her to the doctor and coming and sitting with her at Atherton and watching movies with her or doing whatever she needed. And that actually became an honor for me to be able to sit with her and just be truly amazed by her attitude. She had become trapped in her own body. She was confined to her bed. She couldn't go shopping with me anymore, although we still did some Amazon shopping. But she never complained. She literally never complained. And it is just such an inspiration to me that somehow she could be like that. She would always ask me how I was, how my kids were, how my business was, how my life was, and she just found so much happiness in any time any of us could just come and be with her. And I gave her all I could, but every time I left, I wished I could give her more. I loved her so much, and I was so amazed by her strength of spirit. She really was an inspiration to me. So to call me Little Nelda is actually the biggest compliment, and something I will strive to be for the rest of my life. I love you, Mom. We'll see you again in heaven. And in the meantime, please kiss Dad for all of us.
I love the video, and I'm so glad that we got to see it. Thank you so much for that. I'm sure that you all noticed just the exuberant joy and the fun, loving nature of my mother. She just could light up any room that she was in with her laughter and grace. She truly knew how to have fun. She was playful, she was spontaneous, and she was an inspiration. She was the entertainment director in our family, and over really was all the vacations, anything that we ever did, even if it was going on a late night picnic, she was going to do it regardless of the rain. She became the matriarch of this big whole extended tribe over time, and we love her and we'll miss her so much. But you can imagine that life in our family could be very hectic because she was juggling 4 kids, working, being a pastor's wife, and you got a glimpse of that from what Tanya and Terry were saying with lots of entertaining, but it was hectic. And she was known on more than one occasion to say to me in a rather dramatic voice, "It's just like a 3-ring circus around here." And it kind of was. So fast forward to a beautiful oil painting that I have in my office of a circus master that Danae painted and that Ariel on more than one occasion has tried to talk me out of. And I've always said, no, it's a metaphor for all that I have to do here. I kind of feel like that. But it was also my mother. And I think of those 3 rings as family being the most important, faith and ministry, and her friends were usually in that ring as well, and then vocation. So of those 3, vocation was the smallest. She often said that she taught because it gave her summers off with us, and that she needed to do that because she was supporting Dad so that he could do what he did. Regardless of that, she would pour her heart into little charges year after year. And at the beginning of the year, there was often a parent or 2 that could be very challenging, and she'd have to kind of win them over. And it never failed to amaze me that as the year went on, they would often become her biggest supporters and even then want their younger child in her class when they reached that milestone. My mom was able to be a witness without being preachy. She was gracious, she showed God's love, and some of my earliest memories from when we came to California are as a 4- and 5-year-old. My mom and dad would do children's revivals in VBS schools, and she was a very good storyteller. In fact, in our garage is an old flannel graph, oil painting, and I still remember the stories. It was like you were in an IMAX theater with the way that she could tell them. But fast forward 50 years later, in 2015, I had her come to Oak Grove, and she spent some time with the kids in our autism program in the elementary class playing the accordion. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Francis. It was truly a joy to see my mom play piano, organ, or accordion, and I'm so thrilled, Devin and Maya, that you have the piano. But when my mom played anything, she would play with her whole body, which meant her legs and her feet just going crazy. I really wish I had video. So it, needless to say, went over very well. And when we shared that she had passed, some of the staff said, "Oh, wasn't she that wonderful woman that came and played the accordion?" The second ring was faith and ministry, and that was very important. And as mentioned, She knew that she was called to be a pastor's wife, and she served well. She supported Dad, but the truth is she had great impact in her own right. And there were many churches along the ways, and it was always, she would be in the role that they most needed at the time. So a pretty young memory, and you must have maybe been with the Ringolds. I was 7 or 8 and allowed to go with them to winter camp. It was probably at Hume, and we were in a cabin for the weekend, and she had high school girls. Well, it was all going fine until the morning that they had decided to bury her bra in the snow that night. And she wakes up to find this out, and you have to understand we were raised to be a lady. I think I probably thought it was actually in the Bible for so long. So I'm realizing that this oh no, I was so uptight, what's she gonna do? This is just awful. And she just rolled with the punches, played it all off, put a winter coat on, and just carried on. Just really, really remarkable. But whether it was youth pastor's wife, associate, senior, she was always in the role that was mentoring young women, working with older women to be able to take on the mothers and to teach and to train. She taught Sunday school. She taught others how to teach Sunday school. She was a children's director. And the back of your program has her poem, and it says the year served, but she kind of cut herself short because it says through 1996. That would have been when my dad retired from ministry and he started helping on stewardship campaigns. But give my mom 2 more decades of serving, because up until 2016 when she came here, she was at times leading 3 Bible studies, teaching children's baptism classes, counseling, and making such a big impact in the world. So family was the largest ring. It was very, very important. Like Tanya said, her love was intense and deep. And I like to think of one of her favorite verses, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. That was what her love was like. She was nurturing, but she could be strict. She humbled us. We often said she has eyes in the back of her head and bionic hearing. She struggled with self-esteem but wanted us to be confident. She worked on our character. She wanted us to know that we were loved so much by the Father and by our parents, and she never failed to show that. At a young age, I was married to Will, and she said, "Don't come running home to Mama because you got to work it out with him." And she was real clear that would not be acceptable. And she also said many, many times about not letting the sun go down on your wrath. And we were raised with that, even said it again at your wedding. And sometimes when you were in the middle of a conflict, you didn't want that to be the case because you just wanted it to stop. But it was a good role model of communicating and working through. I will tell a very quick story that Geraldine, through her wonderful interviewing technique, some question we got on. Mom was able to parent different ways at different times for what we needed, and I had been in the role of pretty much the good kid, but when I was in junior high, we moved to a different school. And for some reason, I told everyone that I was Joe. So I guess Joe, and they thought that was my name for a while, from Little Women. Somehow, it gets back to her that I was cutting up, that there was too much talking, that there was a little bit of flirting, and I was very off track. My mom's method of handling this bad news from her daughter was to follow me all day at junior high, sitting right behind me. I was the only girl in the trumpet section, right behind me. I think she actually quit by noon because I was so mortified I would have done anything to make her go away. But in spite of that, some of my friends and many of my teachers were absolutely charmed by her, which kind of irritated me even more. And I remember a couple of them saying, "But at least she cares." And she did, and she showed it. It was a gift that we had her longer than we thought. She was very competitive. You may have not known that, but she graduated from hospice after a year because you can't just stay in it indefinitely. She was a true fighter. During that time, Danae really wanted to tell her that she was expecting before we were ready to tell the rest of the family. So we came and did that and thought that, she may not make it. And yet last Thanksgiving, we had the joy of introducing Farrah to her. And on her 80th birthday, about 3 weeks ago, we were all here as a family. It meant so much. I'm so thankful for that. I'm also thankful that even though we weren't ready to let go, she's able to trade her pain for a crown. Like her favorite hymn said, One of her favorite verses was Isaiah 40:31. But they who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. We're so happy that she's able to be with my dad and with Jesus. Thank you for all the support of the Atherton folks and the people that came, for how much you loved our mom. And thank you for helping us celebrate her life, her legacy of faith, the impact that she made and will make for the kingdom. Thank you so much.
Nelda Jackson's granddaughter, Dan's daughter. When I got the news of Nana's passing, it was really hard, but it didn't really hit me until I was sitting in Spanish class, and my Spanish teacher pronounced a kid named Julio's name Julio. It reminded me of a story that was always told in the family, where Nana was teaching a kid named Jesus and would call him Jesus. But when I was around 7 years old, I distinctly remember being so terrified of losing a loved one. It wasn't the fact that they would disappear, because I knew they would always live in the people who loved them. I remember being afraid that I would forget them. So I was around 7 years old, and it was Easter 2012, and we went to church with Nana and Bappy and the family. And in the kids section, they had taught us about Christ's resurrection. So we went back to Nana and Bappy's house in Corona, and I was baking cookies with Nana. So I asked her about death, and me being 7, got the impression that if someone passed away, they could come back to life. So I asked Nana, if she passed away, would you come back to life? Where do you go? And she responded with, well, we go to heaven. And I said, well, does that mean you would leave me? And she said, no, I'll always be there. She told me that as long as people who loved her and believed in her were alive, she would always live in us. So, after Nana and Bappy's passing, it really, really hit me, Bappy's death especially, because at his funeral I felt sad, but I felt more empty, and it just kind of hit me like a tidal wave here. But I realized you can't forget someone who gives you so much to remember. Our lives change every day. A lot of it is really unexpected, but I know that Nana will always be with us. Her memories will always be with us. I now know I can never forget her, because she gave me so much love. When I was going through a really hard time, I remember she would attempt to send me these texts. She didn't really know how to work a phone. A lot of the time she would send them to my dad, or she would just send me like random pictures of her finger. And I was like, what is this? It was the thought that really counted. And it was funny how when I was in such a dark place, I felt like nothing could ever make me feel better. And then I would get these texts from Nana
Geraldine, Terry's daughter, Nana's granddaughter, and I am going to tell you a little story. So, May 19th, just a few months ago, I had the entire day free to do what I wanted in Los Angeles. I knew that I wanted to spend at least some of the time at Atherton with Nana. So I got there, and after we had talked for a while and played several rounds of Connect 4, I thought maybe I could leave and go shopping. But then I had an idea. I had my mom's nice camera in the back of my car, and I came up with this plan of doing an interview with Nana to ask her questions about herself and her life. Grandpa had passed away several weeks earlier, and one of my regrets with his passing was not knowing enough about him, his past, his childhood, and his life story. I quickly became eager at the idea of getting to know Nana and making a little video about her. I told her what we were going to do, and she seemed quite hesitant. She didn't know how she felt about being on camera, but kindly agreed to follow along as I had asked her to. I rushed to my car to grab my camera while thinking of all the questions I should ask. I wrote down over 50 questions. Naively, I assumed we could just start filming right away, but of course, Nana had other ideas. She wanted me to do her hair first, then put makeup on her, then